So with the forearm, we want to, and the wrist, we want to think of how there are so many levels to the arm. So we have muscles that attach to the very tips of our fingers and then to the knuckles. So the way we change stretches in the forearm varies on the positions of the fingers. So if you extend your wrist out, your fingers are nice and straight, and then you draw the palm of your hand towards you, you're stretching out the forearm. Now, if you stay in this position and you curl your fingers up and then straighten the fingers out, and you might hold one position or another, that's going to take you deeper into the forearm. The other way you can change it, because often our muscles attach above or below the joint, changing the joint can change the stretch. So if I keep my fingers flexed and then I bring my elbow into the side, again, that changes the stretch into my forearm. I want to make sure that the shoulder stays nice and relaxed, and then from there, stretch the fingers out again and then curl the fingers. And I can feel that a little more deeper into my wrist and into the top of my hand with the elbow bent versus straight. So it's just kind of trying to get the various layers that are happening in the wrist and the forearm. We also have the wrist extensors that we also have to think about, so the opposite side of the forearm. So you're pretty much going to repeat exactly what you did for the extensors. You're going to extend the arm and draw the fingers straight up towards the ceiling. I use my opposite hand to assist in the wrist flexion. So it is wrist flexion, but it's forearm extension. So I'm encouraging it through there. Now I find this one a little bit harder to get the finger curl just because you don't want the opposite hand to get in the way. But you want to hold that wrist position and then curl down, and then curl up, and then curl down, and then up. And then again with the elbow, bring the elbow in, still trying to maintain that wrist flexion, and again curl and straighten. And depending on how tight you are in there, you might, maybe you can't fully bend the fingers, they only come so far. So it's working on increasing the range of motion while you're in that position. So when I did the extensors, I went fingers down, and then I stayed there and went fingers up. The other option is flipping the palm and drawing it this way as well. And then again, you can curl the fingers in towards you, because now I'm pushing on the back of my palm, and then it's not in the way of the fingers, and then straighten, and then curl and straighten. I want to make sure that the shoulder stays relaxed, and then bring the elbow into the side, keeping the wrist flexed, and then curl and straighten. I do have to say, people struggle with the wrist position, partially already due to stiffness. So being on a table or being on a chair where you can support your forearm and you're not having to hold through the shoulder joint can be helpful. It's always nice afterwards to do a few wrist circles, and make sure you do both directions. And then also the thumb. It's also good to get some thumb circles in there, both directions. The thumb should be able to adduct across the hand. So sometimes if we're losing mobility through the wrist, we're often losing some mobility through the thumb. So not only should you be able to do your thumb circles, but draw the thumb across. And you should be able to do that to each finger. So you're getting that closing of the palm and the opening of the palm. So if you're noticing that you're losing grip on things, this is some simple exercises that you should be able to do. And it's good to warm it up. And then often if you do have some achy joints through the wrists and the hands, it doesn't hurt to keep the hands warm. So sometimes I'll have people put a heating mat on their table, heat the hands first, and then go through the exercises, which just loosen up the muscles and make them feel a little bit better. So often with wrist issues, people feel very weak and that they can't support themselves for an extended period of time. So something that is helpful is just wrist curls. Have a very lightweight, even a can of soup is helpful. Again, you can rest your forearms on a table or on a chair, and then doing curls up. And then about 5 to 8 of those, and then flipping the palms and curling up and down as well. The reason flipping the palms is different is it changes whether you're using your supinators or your pronators. So the position of your hand, it changes the muscles. And then we want to be able to use the wrist extensors and flexors. So you can go in one direction repetitively, or you could just alternate and get that full range of motion. Now the other thing to consider is when you're practicing weight-bearing exercises, how are you putting your hands on the floor? When we're placing our hand on the floor, we don't want to just like smack it down and then put the weight into it. Think of the pads of your fingers gripping into the mat. I'm almost creating a little bit of a dome in my hand. So there's actually space underneath my palm, and I've created pressure on either side of the hand. So I'm not completely flat. I've created a little bit of a dome. So if you look from the side, there's a little bit of space underneath the palm of my hand, and I'm gripping into my fingers so that I'm not taking all the pressure into my wrist. So it's this versus this. The other thing to be aware of when placing weight into the wrist is the elbow joint. Often, and the shoulder joint actually, often people will hyperextend their elbow. So if you can see the increase of the elbow and it is pointing straight forward, the elbow is locked and hyperextended, and that is a lot of load into the wrist. So if you picture a bulldog, and the bulldog has elbows that point out to the side, they look like they're slightly bent, there is no locking in the joint, and then we need to think about lifting up into the shoulder joint so that we're not jamming up into the neck and collapsing into the shoulder. So I want you to watch the elbow, watch the pressure in the wrist. If you're still struggling with that wrist, you're going to use dumbbells so that you can be here. These ones are a little small because they're not lifting my knuckles off the floor, but you can use a dumbbell that will elevate you off to hold, and then your wrist is in neutral, or a Pilates ball so that you're taking the pressure again out of the wrist and you're not completely compressing it.